Minus 60 seconds and counting. We passed T minus 60. 55 seconds and counting. Neil Armstrong just reported back. It's been a real smooth countdown. We passed the 50-second mark. Power transfer is complete. We're on internal power with the launch vehicle at this time. 40 seconds away from the Apollo 11 liftoff. All the second stage tanks now pressurized. 35 seconds and counting. We are still go with Apollo 11. 30 seconds and counting. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 25 seconds. 20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
Well, hello and welcome to this edition of the Bullpen. As always, I'm James Roy, and with me is Tom Chevrier. Tom, how are you doing?
I'm doing better now. The Astros just took the lead in this ball game. It wasn't looking good early, and the Stros need to win in the worst way. So hopefully Brian Abreu shuts the door and gets it done.
This is the kind of thing you want to see from the Astros as September comes and as we get ready for October ball. So, I mean, yeah, it's nice to see, especially against the Yankees. So, I mean, walking in the go-ahead run, I'll take it. I'll take that every day of the week. 4-4 from Yordan Alvarez. How you feeling about Yordan since he's been back?
He's been on base like over half the time. He's a monster. Like, he looks rested. He's playing in the outfield some, which is good. Yordan Alvarez is a different animal, and he looks like he hasn't missed a step. There's not been any rust. I want to say he's like 14 or 15 for 26, something like that. So the numbers are really, really good. The power is not necessarily there, but I mean, two of the hardest hit baseballs tonight were his at 111, 114 miles an hour. Like, I think when everyone else starts hitting around Yordan, it's just going to be nuts. But right now he's hitting and not a lot of other people are hitting. So they're struggling a little bit. Luckily, everyone is struggling a little bit in the division everywhere. I mean, right now, baseball is just a grind. It's the end of a long season. Guys that get out in front, they're starting to, leak a little bit. They're not looking as strong. So, the Astros are still in first place.
That's what we like to see too. So, I mean, I think they hang on. The trend has been generally that, when they hit a slump late in a season, everyone else does too, at least from what I remember. So, I don't know, glad to see it. But this isn't an Astros podcast, but we do love Houston sports teams in general. This is a Texans podcast. So let's talk. We got some news that has broken in the past couple of days. We'll talk about that. And then we want to look, with our last live before the season starts at the overarching season, what our predictions are for, we'll talk stat lines, some hot takes, how we think the Texans will do as a whole. And then, yeah, that should be the show. So let's start with what broke today. I believe it was today. The team captains were announced, and pretty much business as usual. I saw a lot of people predict pretty much all of the team captains as they occurred, but there's one very glaring difference. One name that sticks out among the rest, and that is Dario Gumbawale. So I'll throw it to you, Tom. How do you feel about the team captain, specifically Dario Gumbawale being named a team captain?
I mean, the man's a Swiss Army knife. I'm surprised you didn't see him as a team captain. No, I mean, I don't think anybody saw it coming.
I saw it coming.
No, I wasn't going to do that. I can't do that. Honestly, I think that's really cool. I know team captains are voted by the players. So for his team to, go out and go, look, I think Dario should be one of our captains, one of our leaders. I mean, it speaks a lot. It speaks a lot about how the team feels about him. And I mean, I think the fans love him. I know he's not a sexy name. He's not gonna, flash any crazy stats or numbers. You're not drafting him in any of your fantasy leagues, but you need guys like Dario on your team. You really do. I mean, he's gonna make one play somewhere along the season that's just gonna, that's why he's there. And I think it's awesome that the team has recognized him for it.
I mean, I agree. I see it. One thing, and it's funny when I pointed this out because sometimes a lot of the things that I'll say on Twitter are very obvious. I don't claim to know a lot more than anyone about anything. Sometimes I'm just saying what is already there because I thought, wow, that's cool. It's interesting. Making an observation. And after he was named, I looked and I said, "Oh, you saw that? Did you see the Yankees pitcher got ejected?"
No, I didn't see that.
The pitcher and Aaron Boone got ejected right before that at bat. So crazy stuff. It's probably something that contributed to.
You're talking about Devin Williams or Camilo Duvall?
Got ejected.
I mean, I could see them They complained about the strike zone all night long. Both sides were yelling.
Oh yeah.
So I'm not surprised at a close pitch that didn't go their way. That was a strike earlier. It's not a strike now. But I mean, there's been pitches all night on both sides that have just been so bad. Altuve got called for a strike and the ball was like up around his neck. And I don't know what he's supposed to do with it.
I don't know either. But so sorry, guys, we're live. Okay. Things are happening. We're going to talk about the stuff that's happening. Anyways, a little bit of an obvious statement. I understand because I got a comment that was like, wow, you're very smart. To which I replied, yes, my mother thinks I'm very smart. Thank you. But obviously in the past, team captains have usually reflected all three facets of the game. And so at first glance, if you didn't know much about anything, you might say, oh, wow, special teams doesn't have any representation here. But I would venture a guess to say that even though it's probably not officially required of the team captain elections, that Dare probably made it on his leadership within special teams and in general. I mean, obviously he's not just a special teams guy, but I think that probably played a heavy hand in why he was selected as a team captain. Without that context, I mean, I honestly would be baffled at the selection, but understanding what he's done, I mean, obviously after it happened, you have to share the clip of him kicking the field goal against the Buccaneers. It's required, mandatory, if you will, to do that upon hearing the news. So that's what I did. And I like it. I mean, and he seemed, I saw the interview with, I think Aaron Wilson asked him about it. He's very humble about it, understands the responsibility that comes with it. I mean, you love to see that kind of stuff because like every other guy that was selected, Nico Collins, Will Anderson Jr., CJ Stroud, Aziz Al-Shaair are leaders in their own right in their side of the ball. And it's kind of like, it's kind of the expectation to some extent with most of those guys that they would be put in that role. So it's nice to see a guy who maybe came a little out of left field. And honestly, if I can, I hadn't really commented on this, but like, and I don't know if it really needs to be said, but last season there was a particular team captain that, when I talked about it was like, okay, this is elected by the players. So either they know something we don't, or, maybe it just reflects poorly on their ability to select team captains. But Laramie Tunsil was a team captain last year. And so I mean, I would have liked Dario Gambale better as a team captain last year than Laramie Tunsil for sure. So, I mean, I don't know.
I don't think you can say that. I know hindsight you can. I don't think you can say that.
I've been on record to say Laramie Tunsil extremely talented, but there's a point where you look at what's happened and okay, maybe at the time I wouldn't have thought that.
Exactly.
But, that's all I'm saying. Hindsight's 2020.
Yes.
All you're saying. Hindsight's 2020. But with what we know now,
100%.
Sometimes guys are thrusted into those leadership positions because they are the most skilled. And I think this drives home my point there because I said throughout the season, that Laramie Tunsil was thrust into a position of leadership because of his skill. We know for a fact that Dario Gambale wasn't elected to a leadership position because of his skill. As skillful as he is as a special teams guy, if we're looking at that group of people, he's not a guy on the roster that stands out as like, yeah, he got elected because he's just the very best on the roster, top cream of the crop. Nothing against Dari. He's a great guy, really good at special teams. But I think it speaks volumes to his character that he was selected. And so that I guess the point I'm trying to get at. Sorry, Dari, if that's misinterpreted. If you decided to listen to the bullpen in your free time before the game this weekend, please don't do that. I need you locked in, Dari. I need you locked in. Put it down. Put the podcast down. All right. With that, there's another bit of news that happened this week. Davis Mills signed a 1-year guaranteed extension. Now we've spoken at length about how this was the last year of his contract. It kind of adds a bit of a questioning air around the move to acquire Graham Mertz, the move to keep him. To some people, I mean, so I just want to know your opinion. The Texans have extended Davis Mills. How does that affect your view of drafting Graham Mertz, and how do you view that signing or that extension as it is?
I think it's the teams. I think it's their showing, their appreciation for Davis Mills. Come in, do the work. Nick Casario with all the word salad that he loves to use. I really think this is them going, look, you've been a really good backup for us. You've done everything we've asked you to do. You've been a very good professional. You come in, you didn't complain, you put your head down, you work, and this is a pay raise. This is the team going, look, we think we should, reward your hard work, your effort, everything. Here, this is what we're paying. Do I think that means that they won't still shop Davis Mills if the right offer comes along? Absolutely not. I still believe Graham Mertz was brought in and protected to potentially succeed Davis Mills at some point. It's just right now going into the season, we've locked everything up. This is the Texans rewarding Davis Mills for being a good professional, doing all the things, saying all the right things, not complaining, coming in, going to work. When he could have been like, hey, I want out. Hey, I'm not happy. Hey, my pay's not right. I need more money. He could have like voiced his displeasure a million times if he wanted to, and didn't do any of that. Said, hey, I love what we have here, knowing that he's not the guy, knowing that he'll never be the guy in Houston, barring some sort of crazy injury. He could have said, hey, I'm still young enough. I can still go out. There's guys that I feel like I'm better than. Give me an opportunity to go win a starting job somewhere else. Didn't do any of that, and the Texans rewarded him, and I think it's great.
I agree for the most part. I think though that there's a couple of signs that make it a lot less likely. Like I think, and even looking back at this past offseason, the value in Davis Mills, as we look at obviously the first thing that people don't look at when they look at player value is length of contract remaining. It's kind of an afterthought to a lot of fans, myself included. A lot of times I'll be like, well, that seems like weird value. Why are we giving that guy up for that? And then I remember, oh yeah, he's in the last year's contract. It's a rental. It's like taking a lot of his value away. I feel like if the Texans were looking to both bolster up the backup position and give Davis Mills a deal that would make him more valuable, I think they would have gone at least multi-year just to give like some team control to whoever they traded him to. But obviously, I guess, if the contract's running out when he's traded, there's always the thought that team might try and work a deal out with him, as part of the trade. But I look at Davis Mills as a guy who, going into this next offseason, would bring a lot of value to himself on the open market. And so I'll say the same thing I said last time, that he signed the 1-year extension with the Texans. He's leaving a lot on the table by doing it. I mean, he's the second highest paid backup in the league, fully guaranteed $7 million. The only backup being paid more than him is Marcus Mariota. So I think it speaks a lot to what the Texans think of him. But overall, I mean, if I was Davis Mills, I wouldn't have been here this year. I would have been like, okay, well, I have everything that a backup quarterback needs to draw a market. I would want to at least test the market, but there's obviously, Davis Mills is his own person. He has his own, thoughts and dreams and aspirations or whatever. So if he really likes the situation he's in, he likes where he's at, then he's probably, and also, like I said, I mean, it's not like he reset the backup quarterback market, but he moved to the top of it. In a way, there's only one guy being paid more than him at the position that he serves. So it could just be a security thing. But I could name a few teams off the top of my head where he would at least contend for the starting job. I'm thinking Pittsburgh. I actually had a conversation with a guy at work today where I was like, I'm really down on Aaron Rodgers. So like, that's why I mentioned Pittsburgh. Cause like, I think that Davis Mills would be a better locker room leader already, just because Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers. We're like 4 years removed from a good Aaron Rodgers season. So like, I have no faith in him to be good whatsoever this season. And it's fitting that he's in Pittsburgh, a team that needs a quarterback to be really good this season to save Mike Tomlin's job. But
I couldn't disagree with you more.
Mike Tomlin, they already contemplated firing him last season. Another mediocre finish with even with the playoffs being made and losing, I think could result in him losing his job. I don't think, unless the Steelers are channeling, the 07 Texans and are just like, yeah, Gary, whatever you say, you need 7 years to get us there. Yeah, sure. That's perfectly fine. We'll wait for it.
Mike Tomlin has had a winning record for like 20 seasons or something crazy. There's a stat. It's out there. I don't have it in front of me. The dude isn't going anywhere. They're not firing him. They have to get him a quarterback, yes, but the defense is always good, which is his calling card. Mike Tomlin is perfectly fine. I don't know.
This raises a question. I have to ask you this question now because I think I know what your answer is going to be, but I don't know. Let's say the Texans. You meet with an entity and they are like, I'm all knowing, all being, I am in charge of football. I write the script. And you have a choice to make right now as a Texans fan. This season, CJ Stroud can go, 13-3, AFC Championship, make it to the Super Bowl, take the whole thing. He'll do it right now. But the Texans will never have another winning season again after he does that. The Texans will win a Super Bowl, but they will never have another winning season. The script will never be written. They'll be the perennial Browns. Eventually, people will forget they won a Super Bowl. The Browns don't have a Super Bowl, but they'll just be basically like the Browns, or like one of those teams that won one Super Bowl on an off year and is now.
Are you comparing what
Tomlin? Or your other option is the Texans will always contend. They will be a top 3 seed in the AFC every year. They'll run deep in the playoffs, and they may make a Super Bowl, but they will never win it. They will never win the big game. They will be competitive every year. They will have a winning record at the very least, and they'll challenge. They'll go high, but they will never win a Super Bowl. Which one would you choose?
I don't understand the question. Like, how are you scripting this? Tomlinson is neither of these things. Or Tomlin, I'm sorry.
He's
Tomlin
neither. Let's cut. You can't look at the whole picture. He has won a couple Super Bowls, and now he is the better half of the other option. But my question to you is, obviously you've been around longer than the Texans, but for me, the Texans are all I know. I've been alive longer, but like my football fandom has stretched the span of the Texans' existence. And so after a while, like it's nice to be competitive every year, but I want to see a team go all the way. Like the chance of winning a Super Bowl to me is what matters. So neither option's good, but I think it's a good exercise in where your priorities are. And for me right now, if I'm a Steelers fan, I'm getting into Cowboys fan territory where it's cool. We're good every year, but how long has it been since we won a Super Bowl? And obviously they've won a Super Bowl about 10, 12 years more recently than the Cowboys, but
and like way more recently than like a whole bunch of other teams. But
it still stands to reason over time, you keep Mike Tomlin. He doesn't take the team to a Super Bowl because you're perpetually mediocre. You're perpetually picking in the middle of rounds. You're not getting your quarterback. The odds of hitting on a quarterback when you don't get high draft capital to invest in that position, and when elite quarterbacks, like what was it? When was the last time that a truly elite quarterback that was like a fixed a franchise immediately went on sale on the open market and free agency and was signed to that team and led them to a Super Bowl? I think back to Peyton Manning. That was like what, 12 years ago? Are you going to wait another 10 or 12 years for either the Steelers to figure out how to draft a quarterback or for an elite quarterback that has decent time left to come available? They're a quarterback away from a Super Bowl, but they'll never find it.
Why do you say that?
It just has been how it's played out. They watched Ben Roethlisberger age. They watched him age into oblivion. And ever since then, they've been chasing free agent quarterbacks because they're too good to get a high draft pick in order to draft their quarterback. They are really good defensively, and they have the makings of an okay offense, an offense that is much elevated by great quarterback play. But we have years of history that show that they can't find a new quarterback. And I don't know.
To be fair,
that's where I'm at on it.
To be fair, they drafted guys and they went out and tried to sign guys. JJ Watt famously said, if you got a quarterback in this league, you got a shot. If you don't, you don't. And it's not for the lack of trying. And you're not going to not build the rest of your team because you can't get one. I commend what the Steelers have done. The Steelers have made sure that they will be in it every year. A break this way, that way. They're to me, their dynasty is totally underrated because everybody wants to measure in titles. Like I can't be good. So what
their dynasty is great because of, I guess you're talking about their recent Mike Tomlin dynasty, which still has two Super Bowls.
Exactly. So if you told me I would get to choose between to play your game a little bit, and we'll get back into Texan stuff. If you told me, okay, I can go have Bill O'Brien as my quarterback or my head coach, and Jack Easterby in my front office because everybody loves him, even though I don't think he was nearly as much to do with everything, but that's a different story. I could have them in my building and I win one Super Bowl and then be trash the rest. Or you give me what the Steelers have and go, but you're not going to win a Super Bowl in 2 decades, 3 decades, whatever. I want to have a shot at the thing. Like I'd want to be there. So the other side of the coin, to get back to the Texans a little bit, the Titans just drafted Cam Ward, number 1 overall. You know what I mean? And maybe he's the guy, maybe he's not. You know, if the Titans catch lightning in a bottle, one magical season, maybe somebody gets hurt, a key play, whatever, the Texans don't make it, they make it, they win a Super Bowl. Say they win a Super Bowl, Cam Ward. And then they're garbage the rest of the time. You're telling me you'd rather have that one ring than CJ just ball out every year consistent AFC Championship, Super Bowl, but we don't win it. You'd rather have the other?
I know a few Buffalo Bills fans, and I'd use the 90s as a microcosm of what it would be to be a Texans fan in the latter scenario. And I can tell you that making the Super Bowl 4 times in a row and not winning it is embarrassing. And I feel better as a Texans fan that's never made it than to have a team that was good enough to win a Super Bowl and couldn't do it 4 years in a row.
You're crazy.
And maybe the logic's flawed. I mean, I love watching the Texans play well. That was what was frustrating about the 2024 season, is that we saw flashes of greatness. We saw progression towards a lot better than they did in 2024 and 2023. And then it just kind of remained stagnant. And so that's kind of where I'm coming from, is like this thought that what the Steelers are doing right now, what they've done for the past decade of, yeah, you know, we'll win 8 to 10 games and we might make the playoffs, but we won't win in the playoffs. We don't do that. That's not something we do anymore. Is a bit mediocre, mind-numbing. It's worse than going to the Super Bowl 4 times and not winning it. That's for sure. Obviously, we look at the whole stretch of Mike Tomlin's career, and I think that Mike Tomlin as a coach encompasses everything you want in a coach. And I, personally, if he was the coach of the Texans and that was his career, I think he'd, much like, Greg Popovich, Bill Belichick. Granted, I guess Bill Belichick ended up getting fired, but I think you kind of coach your way into being able to say when you're done. But also, I guess we've kind of reached that point with Mike Tomlin. We reached that point with Bill Belichick a lot quicker than I thought we would, where we're so far removed from the greatness of what he did that it's cool that he's winning enough football games to have a winning record every season. But it's been a long time since the Steelers were a legit competitor. And a lot of those seasons were only impressive because the Steelers were expected to suck. They were expected to do absolutely nothing. And he somehow coached them up to 8 or 9 wins. And a lot of those seasons, they didn't make the playoffs. It was just impressive that they, got a winning season out of it. I mean, they're just kind of, I don't know.
That can't
There's
be a
something
knock
about
on
that
the
that just doesn't
coach.
sit. I like where the Texans are at. Now, I'll tell you this, to speak to my question to you earlier. The Texans, as they stand, a team that wins 10 games their first 2 seasons, if that progresses, let's say we see the Texans win 12 to 13 games this year. I'd love to see that. And not winning the Super Bowl would feel a lot better this season because there would be progression. But even at that high of a win total, if the Texans win 13 games every season and CJ balls out and they continually make it to the AFC Championship game and lose, we've already seen that. We've already seen that. I can already give you a real life comparison as to what that looks like, because I can look at the Baltimore Ravens and I can look at Baltimore Ravens fans and the whole NFL and the way they view it. And I can tell you this, there's a lot of people talking about how Lamar Jackson's greatness in his career rides on his ability to actually make the step, make the jump. And so it's good conversation. It's a good talk. But if I'm, 5 years from now stuck in a continuous cycle of talking about how I believe CJ Stroud can break through the AFC Championship game after he hasn't done it several years in a row, I'm going to lose my mind. I'm going to go crazy. I need to know that they can actually do it. And so I want the team to be competitive. I would hate to see them win a Super Bowl and then never see them be competitive again. I don't think either option's good. I personally have not come to terms with what my selection would be that question. It just comes to mind when I think about this discussion around Mike Tomlin and how, he's great. He's great. He's great.
For me, I want as many opportunities as you can generate. All you can hope for is a chance. Get in, the old poker saying, a chip in a chair. And if you do that, eventually, you knock on the door enough times, you come through. To the whole, I just want one lightning in a bottle. We figured it out one year magically and then never again. I think that's more luck than anything. I am so impressed with what the Steelers have been able to do, throughout every season, just consistently be good. And they're not like, when we talk about like baseball, where teams buy, contenders where they, you can't really do that in the NFL. It's capped. You got to pick and choose your spots. It's not like we're talking about the Yankees or the Dodgers or the Red Sox that are just out there buying up all the players and going, nope, we're just going to throw money at our problem. No, you have to actually go and draft, and you have to build your team up a certain kind of way. And the Steelers, for whatever, haven't always had all the pieces, but they've always got good pieces to be competitive. They're in probably the toughest division in all of football. I mean, you just talked about the Ravens. They got it. That's part of the problem. You got the Ravens, you got the Steelers, you got good teams there.
Part of the problem with the Ravens is that teams like the Buffalo Bills and Kansas City Chiefs seem to be really hard for them to beat in the postseason, even though they can dog walk them in the regular season at times. But I mean, I don't know. That's a question that I ask you that I don't want to have to answer, because there's not a good answer to it. Like it's a lose-lose.
I'll answer it. I'll answer it because I know it's not easy. I would rather have the consistency. I would rather have a shot every year than go, I know we're going to be bad for 5 years, but maybe that 6th year we can figure it out one time, and then everybody's going to leave, and then we're going to suck again. Because, I mean, that's kind of the scenario you kind of painted out. Everybody's a free agent. They all went somewhere else.
Yeah. Well, now that we've gone down that rabbit hole,
that's the show, folks.
let's discuss the Texans 2025 season for a bit before we bring it to a close. This is a Texans podcast anyways. We have a question on Instagram, says thoughts on Jaden Higgins. So we'll start in the wide receiver room area. Looking at the 2025 season, any hot takes, anything that you see in the wide receiver room that maybe will play out a little different from how people are viewing it right now?
I mean, right now, with what we know today, looking at injuries and stuff like that, Higgins and Noel might be a big story early on. I mean, you've got guys that are nicked up right now. I don't exactly know what the depth chart looks like. I mean, we all kind of assume it's a certain kind of way. The young guys are, at the bottom and all the vets are up. So Watson's probably going to slot in, as opposite of Nico right now. And I don't know what they do with slot. I mean, as it stands, and I don't know if you were going to get into it later or not, but, guys didn't practice today due to hamstring were Braxton Berrios and Christian Kirk. So it's still a few days out. Friday's normally the telltale. If they practice Friday, then you feel good about them playing, but something to monitor. If those guys don't play, maybe the young guys are asked to step in right away. Hutchinson is probably a dude that we're not talking about enough. All they did was talk about him during the training camp and preseason. And while I just named everybody but him, he's probably the guy that should be talked about more.
Yeah, and that's a good segue there. You mentioned the injury report. We will be doing our previews and recaps. So aside from doing our live stream format, we will also have pre-recorded videos, that will also the audios of those will be available on our RSS feed. So we'll probably get a little deeper into the injury report and in the context of the matchup in that. So stay tuned for that. As far as wide receiver room goes, I've been stashing Xavier Hutchinson in a lot of fantasy leagues wherever I have space for him. I just saw a lot of signs late in training camp that indicated well the unofficial depth chart's out. The starting 3 wide receivers per the unofficial depth chart is Nico Collins, Christian Kirk, and Jaden Higgins. And I agree with Tom that due to the way that the injury report is shaking out early, if Barrios or Kirk can't go, we might see a little more run for Noel. Higgins is already, at least per the unofficial depth chart, slated as a starter. But late in training camp, late in the preseason, and who knows, maybe this was just a product of like wanting to see more from Hutch before they made a decision. It kind of felt like he secured his roster spot really early, so I don't know if that's the case. I felt like the only reason he played late in the preseason was because he's towards the bottom part of the depth chart. So you kind of want to put, those guys in there because you don't want to put your like starters in there. But his usage early, even during those games or during games where the starters played, he got a lot of run with the starters in training camp and on the field during a preseason. So I'm interested to see, and I ventured a guess that we will probably see more from him than a lot of people are leading on. So that's my big thing with the wide receiver room. Looking at the offense in general, let's kind of zoom in on the running back room. With Joe Mixon out the first 4 weeks, we've got a little bit of a different vibe than we were probably anticipating early in the offseason. But what are we thinking that room looks like early on? And do you have any hot takes about like players and where they're sorted at in that room?
It's really interesting because Vegas doesn't have a good grasp on it, in my opinion. You would think that the Texans would just plug and play Nick Chubb for Joe Mixon. And Vegas seems to feel like that is not what they're going to do. We looked at it on another podcast that I did, Houston Sports Takes with Robert Land. If y'all are looking for something else to check out, he's got something that's really good. He normally gets into all the sports, but right now, it's football season. And he's got a thing with FanDuel where, I think the prop was like 50 yards for Nick Chubb. And I just feel like that's for a team that wants to run the football as much as they do, that just feels incredibly low. So if Vegas feels that way, then that means it's really going to be a whole committee based on their view, and everybody's going to get to touch the rock a little bit. That means Woody Marks will probably get the ball some. Dari might get some. Dameon Pierce obviously being RB2. So it's just going to be spread all over the place is what Vegas sees. I tend to believe Nick Chubb's going to get the rock until he doesn't want it. And then he's going to rush the ball probably 15 times. And if he's averaging, 4 yards a carry like it was in preseason or whatever, I mean, you do the math. That's way more than 50.
Yeah. I think that in the interest of protecting the investment in Nick Chubb, that while I think early on in games, we'll see him get the most of the run, but I think there's too much talent in that running back room to just run Nick Chubb into the ground. So I do believe that the top 2, based off how the unofficial depth chart has panned out, will be Nick Chubb, and then Dameon Pierce will be the first one to spell him. I do think that with Nick Chubb in the lead back role, I liked Nick Chubb a lot initially when he was signed because his pass blocking ability and everything slots him really well as a third down back. But if he's the lead back, obviously you probably want to spell him with someone else on third down. Woody Marks showed well there, and Dario Gambole has performed that role before. The depth chart has Dario Gambole ahead of Woody Marks. I'm not sure if that continues to pan out, but if I'm giving my take on the running back room early in the season, I agree with you that it'll probably be Nick Chubb pretty heavily. I think that at first we'll probably see more of Dameon Pierce. Depending on how he shows, we could see more of Woody Marks to try and see what we have in him if Pierce can't show well. And even if he does, I still think that Woody Marks is who will I think would be more likely to see some time than Dario Gambole, but the Texans did just name Dario Gambole a captain, so that I tried to assign blame to it earlier, or not blame, but I tried to assign, some sort of reasoning to it as being special teams. But if it's just him as a player, maybe they too do view him as someone who could contribute significantly. And someone we haven't mentioned is British Brooks, mainly because I think a lot of people, I don't want to say are wondering why he made the roster. I mean, I think that British Brooks is a skilled player, but I'm interested to see his usage because I don't know if they're going to just throw him back there as a bruiser. They have a decent chunk of bruiser running backs. I don't think they need to throw him back there in that capacity. And then, where does he just play at fullback? Like they're saying they're going to call up Jacob Johnson for that role. So then where does British Brooks fit in the grander scheme of things? I'm interested to see. And then we'll talk about quarterback. I feel like we've beaten the topic of offensive line to death. And so we'll probably skip over that for now on the overarching part of the season. But looking at quarterback, all I want to know is where do you foresee CJ's yardage numbers this season?
That's a really good question, and it's really difficult because he's getting back to calling his own plays, and I just really wonder. There's a lot of change on the offensive side of the football that I don't think is getting enough attention. I mean, when you talk about a new offensive coordinator, you expect him to make mistakes, right? When you talk about a new O-line coach, you expect him to make mistakes. When you talk about CJ taking the reins where he didn't have them for the last 2 years, you expect him to make mistakes. So I don't know what the number is that's out there, whether it be Vegas or fantasy or whatever. I imagine he'll flirt with 4,000 yards. I imagine, that's just kind of like organically, right? They play extra football games now. I feel like that number seems really attainable. I don't think he'll be like top 5 in passing or anything like that, but I think he'll be, right around top 10 somewhere as far as yardage. I hope that the interception number comes back down. I know, he was flawless as a rookie, then kind of regressed a little bit. And I saw him turn the ball a little bit over in training camp and preseason, obviously probably just working on some things. I just, protection of the football for me, I think is just going to be really key for this football team because the defense is so good that you really just, if you make a team have to travel the length of the football field against the Texans, I really feel like it's just going to be a hard task for a lot of teams.
No, yeah, 100%. I was on the episode just released today. I was on Locked On Texans, and I was asked to give a hot take, and I'm not usually a very hot take guy, but I have a lot of confidence in this new offensive scheme. Obviously, pending if the offensive line can execute it and actually make it work well, because we've assigned root cause of the Texans' offensive woes to scheme. But we obviously have not seen a significant improvement in talent along the offensive line, just objectively based off what's on paper. So my big take was that I think CJ could get close to or eclipse 5,000 yards if the interior offensive line can effectively block in the passing game. I don't think it's ever really been the tackles that were the problem. And even with Laremy Tunsil's false start issues, he's still a skilled tackle. And I don't think that was ever really what was giving the Texans problems. It was always the interior offensive line. I think most people would agree. So if they can take the 2 of the 3 pass blockers that were rated lower by PFF than Kenyon Green last season and use them to create an effective pocket for CJ Stroud. We saw it throughout the offseason in joint practice with the Lions in game. And I think you said that D'Amico is looking at and showing guys film and using when he has time versus when he doesn't have time. So if CJ is consistently given time to throw, I don't think it's a stretch to say last season, Jared Goff put up 4,600 yards. I think that CJ Stroud with a pocket and consistent protection is as good, if not better than Jared Goff. So I don't think it's unreasonable to put him at or around that number, but that's my hot take / analysis of what we could expect to see from CJ Stroud. We got an Instagram comment asking us to talk about the offensive line. So there is me peppering the offensive line into the discussion.
I was just about to give you all the business because you were like, we won't talk about the offensive line.
We're not going to talk about the offensive line.
And then I'm going to answer my question by talking about the offensive line.
But I'm going to, no, yeah. That was Jack
I do,
Gerstenharber, who just joined a couple of my fantasy football leagues. So shout
I
out to you,
do
Jack.
want to point something out though, and I'm curious. I'm curious, really, honestly curious of your answer because I have mine. But you have made mention of Lakin Tomlinson and who's the other guy that graded lower than Kenyon Green?
Ed Ingram.
Ed Ingram. You've made mention of those guys grading lower PFF than Kenyon Green so many times. So many times.
It's been the big talking point. That's like when those signings were made, everyone was like, those guys aren't good. They rate lower than Kenyon Green at pass blocking on per PFF.
Understand 100%. Not arguing that at all. My question to you is Kenyon Green's out there walking the street right now. Doesn't have a job. If the Texans went out and got Kenyon Green, would you support it? Going, well, he's better than the guys they got. There's VFF. And it's new schemes, new schemes.
I would be questioning.
Or would you be like, why did they do this? This is wrong.
To answer your
Green's
question,
bad at football. But you know what I mean? There's the people that want to point PFF grades, and I'm like, if they brought that guy in the room right now, they could go sign him for pennies on the dollar and go, you know what, we want him to compete with Ed Ingram and Lakin Tomlinson because we think we can fix him. We've got a different voice.
Yeah, I mean, here to answer your question, I just read today, didn't verify this, and obviously with misinformation floating around everywhere, maybe it's not true, who knows. But for the first time since April of 2021, there is less jobs available than there are unemployed people. And I think that that's for good reason because Kenyon Green should not ever hold a job again blocking a quarterback unless you're interested in, hiring him to allow that quarterback to be physically injured by the pass rush, in which case perfect candidate for the job. But I don't think there's anyone hiring for those jobs. So great. He was a solid run blocker. That was always the thing that got me. Like, I don't know if like Nick Caserio, because that was the talk around him when he was drafted, like solid run blocker, raw talent. Maybe you could fix him. And I think that Nick had his like, I think I can fix him moment with Kenyon Green. Not that that's a moment. He's done that with a few players where there was some, I don't want to say clear flaws, but like looking back at the way they were scouted later on, because we as fans get to talk with hindsight a lot of times. There was some signs to the people scouting him that maybe that wasn't a good decision. But no, to answer your question,
he's an Aggie, and that should have been all you needed.
Oh yeah, that's all I needed to know. I mean, that was my first reaction when he was drafted. I was like,
as a Longhorn fan,
Aggie,
as soon as you told me he was from College Station, I'd be like, I don't know. I mean, they've had some good ones, but they've had some bad ones.
Yeah. So with that, I guess we've adequately covered offensive line. Let's talk about the defense real quick. Before I even call it a specific position group, I just want to know from you, which position group do you think, knowing that this is a top 5 defense and every group is pretty strong in its own way, which position group specifically do you think is this team's biggest strength?
Biggest strength? It has to be D-line. They have an army and a good army. They've amassed tons of really good talent on the D-line. I mean, the guys that are going to come in to give guys breaks, when you're talking about, the third and fourth edge rusher, you're normally not talking about guys that you're like, oh man, that's a good player, for one or two plays. I really feel like you're going to be really good no matter who's out there on the D line for the Texans whenever they're out there.
We're seeing whole editorial pieces from Houston Stressens on Darnell Taylor.
Yeah.
Like, oh, wow, yeah. This guy is the third or fourth pass rusher on the team, but yeah. So
I was thinking more like Derek Barnett
Derek Barnett too, but yeah. Which one do you view as being higher? They're obviously at the same level on the depth chart, but which one do you view as being like the better pass rusher? I think Derek Barnett. He's been with the team longer. He's shown a lot. He has a body of work here in Houston as the guy who comes in relief.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I think we're blessed because we've got them both, I'm thrilled either way.
Yeah, I agree. I'll play devil's advocate, but I feel like these two groups kind of feed into each other. So you could argue it one way or another. And we've had out this discussion where I'm like, well, a good pass rush makes the secondary better because it forces the ball out quicker. But I'll go with the secondary. I think that Derek Stingley, When we're breaking down this defense, Derek Stingley and Will Anderson Jr. are clearly defensive player of the year candidates. So like you have a defensive player of the year candidate on each phase of the offense. I think it was clear that the line or of the defense, I think that the linebacker room was going to be the odd man out. There's just not like a guy in that room that's like putting up that level of play as good as the linebacking room is. So I'd go with the secondary. I really like. I'm interested to see Kamari Lassiter's next step. I'm interested to see more of Jalen Petrie in this nickel, star safety role. And I'd like to clarify something. I don't think we ever talked about it after I made a statement that was like a breakout year from Kalen Bullock would feed families. And a lot of the comments were, this past season wasn't a breakout season. And to that, I will say this. Anyway, I look back to Steve Slayton.
Breakout.
Steve Slayton had a really good rookie season. Would you call it a breakout? No, because when he was presented with the opportunity to break out, we ended up not really seeing it from him, and then we ended up putting Arian Foster in, and the rest is history. Then Arian Foster, after a brief showing, then had a really good season, and then a breakout year after. I think that there's some requirement of time to pass. It can't just be one really good season. So there's a reason why I say that we need to see a breakout season from Kalen Bullock, in that we've already kind of seen the national media start to talk about him. There's a lot of guys that know of him, but I need him to be a household name by the end of the season. Break out. Everyone's talking about how great Kalen Bullock is. That's something that heavily affects, because like I said, I'm playing devil's advocate here because I kind of agree with you that the interior defensive line is steady and consistent, and your bookends at the defensive end spots are unreal. So it's really hard to argue that. And one of the reasons why is that, Kalen Bullock needs to break out. And that's really, the differentiating factor. Every other piece of the secondary, for the most part, like outside of Bullock, and I would add Lassiter to that, since we're talking about guys needing more than one season of good play or great play in order to prove to be a breakout star. I would say that there's some potential or some need to realize that potential in the secondary that is not really there. Like Will Anderson's breakout season was last year. Like that was his breakout year. Whether you want to believe it or not, he had a really good rookie season, but he broke out in his sophomore season. So, and Danielle Hunter's been at it a while. So he had his breakout year a while ago. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you, but I would say that it's really between the secondary and the D line. I don't think the linebackers really are in that discussion. Last question I'll ask you about the defense. We don't need to break down position by position, player by player, but the term top 5 defense has been thrown around. I believe it was the case last year. I believe it's the case this year. How do you feel about the term top 5 defense as it is used in relation to this Texans defense?
I think that's a fair assessment. I think when you look at the roster they've assembled and really trying to check all the boxes, they've got talent at every level. I mean, they've got elite talent at every level. I know we didn't talk about the linebacker room, but I think they can be really, really good. Aziz Al-Shair is a captain. I think that's because of his play. I think he's a quarterback on defense. I think he's really solidified, what the linebacking core is. Because that's a guy that plays all the time, and unless they're going to suspend him, the guy's been really healthy, really durable, and I think he's a really good leader as well. The reason I chose the D-line over the secondary, just to get back to that real quick, is about depth. We were talking about the third and the fourth D linemen, and you're talking about guys that are probably going to be starters that need to break out. And you don't want to talk about whoever is behind those guys. I don't want to see the world in which Kamari Lassiter gets injured, because I don't know who that guy is behind him. And I don't feel good about that, whoever that may be. You know what I mean? We're talking about Derek Barnett. If God forbid something happened to Danielle Hunter or Will Anderson Jr. and they were out,
knock on some wood. You got some wood to knock on.
They were out for, a month. Derek Barnett and those guys, they'll be all right. I think they'll still be really good. If Kamari Lassiter or Kalen Bullock go down, like all of a sudden that room gets really thin, really thin.
For me, it depends on time. I think that MJ Stewart is solid short term. I just don't like him long term. I don't want MJ Stewart to be the starter for the rest of the season, but I do think he's a serviceable backup.
Something I saw Stresson say, and you may not like this comment because it would not necessarily look good on your secondary as you see it, is that with the way the safety room is working out and guys not, the Jimmy Ward situation and things of that nature, we could see more Jalen Petrie as a safety and EJ Speed as that star safety guy. And obviously they rotated him out, right? So he wouldn't be on the field as much. Maybe it would be, in that vein, but he may be asked to be more of that safety, and you may not love that. That could make the secondary not as sexy if you put him there, because I don't think that's his best position.
I mean, yeah, I've already spoken to that, but yeah, the short of it is that Jalen Petrie did not show well in his sophomore season as a safety because the team got good, and he was then asked to actually cover instead of stopping things at the second level or at the third level, as opposed to where he's at. It's the star safety role plays into a lot of his strengths. So I'm not a huge fan of the idea of playing him there for significant time. I mean, the occasional snap is fine, but I think that of the two things that he does, between being a hard-nosed run stopper and a coverage guy, I think he's better at the former. So that's just kind of where I'm at on that, though. But yeah, all right. I think with that, we will bring this live stream to a close. Make sure you're on the lookout. We are going to be, we're going to be 1 minute. Oh, goodness. I was like,
Oh, he's muted. Oh, and he's gone. Brandon, I will answer the question. Kenyon Green would not make the Aggie squad now. As much as I'm not an Aggie fan, I do believe that they do have some talent, and I don't know if Kenyon Green would be a part of that.
Can you hear me now?
We can, but you've got an echo that is wild right now. You're like a million miles away. Whatever you did, it was not for the better. It was for the worse.
There we go. Is that better?
That's better. There you go.
Okay, sweet. Sorry, my whole rig was unplugged, so it was telling me my laptop's about to die, even though I thought it had been charging this whole time.
Oof.
So there is that. All right, now we can bring this thing to a close. Wait, did Brandon give a comment? I didn't see the comments on here though.
It's over here in the YouTube comments. It was like, could Kenyon Green make the Aggie squad right now? And then he was like, don't ever say that. Yeah. And I was like, no, I don't think he could. I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, the Aggies are probably showing a little better in the SEC than the Longhorns are right now. But I'm just anyway. I don't want to get too far into it. But yeah, be on the lookout later this week for our preview of the Rams game. I'm also gonna be at that game, so make sure you follow me on socials. Maybe I'll put out some good content from there. Maybe I won't. It depends. We'll see.
Maybe I'll watch the game.
Maybe I'll watch the game. Who knows? As a fan of the team, that's what I aim to do. But yeah, so you can find me on social media at James Roy NFL, all platforms, and Tom is TC Tom1 on Instagram and Third Coast Tom on Twitter. And we are the Bullpen. We're glad you stopped by to listen to us talk about the Texans. As always, stay classy, Houston, and vamos Texans.